So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find then the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the Israelic lineage, from the prophets of the lineage of the Messiah, where we find then this scripture being very true these days, where then we find Yirmiyahu the prophet. We find him very clearly explaining from his time. He was then centuries after, then the scripture was then closed, and then he recorded a lot of this information prior of the Messiah, centuries before then the spring feast. So then finding many areas of the scripture where we find then during this time of restoration and reduction, and then reading the warning of the Messiah from Galah chapter 1:8, as we understand from the Hebraic viewpoint or the Israelic viewpoint, we find then many layers of understanding of the scripture where we can't go by numbers. The Israelic writings then from the Messiah's lineage, those are layer upon layer. So when you read then the scripture and you come to the area where you read line upon line, precept upon precept, those are the wrong translations. The understanding is layer upon layer. This is what the Creator has taught us. So then the Messiah has explained many areas of then the time of the end. So where do we find the absolutely certainty, the surety of this time of restoration and reduction? Where do we find in the scripture? There are many areas then. Prior of explaining where you find those areas, let's evaluate what so far was done wrong. So then you can yourself find the answer. During the time of the Enigma machine, there was a person over there from the mathematicians. It's not finding the answer, it's discarding then what is junk. Very smart. So then, in order for the people to become a bit more smarter than their own, so then let's try to find what was done wrong, so then they can do the contrary and find the truth, if they have any interest in understanding tabernacling. So then, we understand there are many countries around the world being very serious and trying to take care of their governments and being fair, political, properly given the understandings and doing their very best. Then we have understand then what the Messiah has explained regarding time of reduction. We have to understand what then the prophet has said regarding tabernacling. The politician Daniel explaining what it was, and then the understandings of the countries as far as what they think or what they thought was then holy and divine of some sort. In the United States, our country believed some sort of a scripture from the Israelic lineage of some sort of their own. Not the real scripture from the Israelic lineage, but some sort of scandalized scripture where then the future was set based upon some sort of a holy city. We can't say that USA is not religious, because our government has prepared a place in the center of the United States, a place named the Ozarks, where then the government has believed some sort of holy city of their own with 12 gates, underground areas where they can drive for miles. Huge, 72,000 square building where they thought they had some sort of holy city of their own. They can't deny it. The place is there, the Ozarks. There is a former Navy SEAL. He was a governor of one of the United States state, and he was a Navy SEAL. You know, the Navy, they never lie. If you want to know the truth, you know, Navy people, they never lie. And he had an investigation done over there in the Ozarks, and he found the place. He drove through those burrows over there in the Ozarks. Amazingly big, 50 million squares underground, paved, air conditioned, you know, with homes, houses, farming, railroad tracks outside, 12 gates of their own. So then, United States was always then regarded as imperialists. It's a very bad term outside. It truly has a negative tone. Not saying Americans are bad people, because a lot of them are not. But then the system that this country has adopted as imperialists has a very huge negative tone outside of the country. Not promoting the further destruction of our country, otherwise it wouldn't be revealing what those areas of understanding of the holy Israelic lineage is teaching us. If my intention was then to screw up our government, would leave as it is. Let them break their noses in the last, you know, push of this end of time. Would say, you know what, heck with them, let them have their own way. They're going to break their faces in 36 months. Then they're going over there in the Ozarks, get themselves in burrows and holes as reptiles. Slithering, sliming reptiles. This is what the government is. So if they are being informed, it's because a person is speaking has a bit of care, warning them what's coming in the future. Didn't come from me, came from the scripture. Read properly, read from the Israelic lineage. Now, our country has adopted a Greco-Roman translation that has nothing to do with the Israelic lineage. What has then brought them thus far? They're going to a hole. Imperialists, reptiles. Very negative tone, but with a positive outcome. If the government gets hurt because they hear the truth, not only they are prideful, stupid, but then they have to deal with the negative side of being prideful. However, they have believed some sort of a scripture because they built over there a city of their own with 12 gates, so indicates some sort of a scripture. Thinking they are some sort of a humble people, but as we know, they are reptiles. Only incompetent governments build for themselves underground locations where they're going to stick themselves as reptiles. Not only this, but then the Israelic lineage has showed us absolutely, undoubtedly, cleanly and very clear and clean the Creator's plan, His agenda. Time of restoration and reduction, whatsoever was learned during the time of the 1,000 years of deceit is discarded. You know, the Creator, He was not joking when He said time of restoration. I thought He would kind of patch up there, because it was somewhat a halfway working plan. He would kind of, patch up the corners and, let the plan go until the time of the end is going to get burned anyway. My perception was wrong. Whatsoever was learned during the time of the 1,000 years is discarded. So then, evaluating of our own country, its inability of understanding Scripture, though building up for themselves with the citizens' money, a place in the midst of the forest where they can act as reptiles. Let's try to understand what is truth. If we do understand tabernacling, then if you do the contrary, you understand the truth. So then, not giving personal opinion, let's read the Scripture. From the Israelic lineage, not Greco-Roman. Because both countries where those scandalized Scripture came from, they are busted. So it didn't work for them, doesn't work for anybody else. So then the first section is studying then the politician Daniel. He was a politician, if you like it or not. If you have adopted a Greco-Roman translation, then it didn't work. Then you have to understand what a real politician should do. Daniel was a politician. Because prophet Daniel. No, he was not a prophet only. He was a politician. Removing away this religiosity from reading the Scripture. These holy documents describes the areas of tabernacling and Gentile level. Politicians. Politics. This is what Daniel was. But not only a politician, he was a tradesperson. He was an astronomer, and he was a prophet, explaining tabernacling. However, his understanding of tabernacling, those were far because he was away from the holy city, obviously. However, he did understand because he had Yirmiyahu's Scripture with him. As you can read after the finishing of the 70 years of captivity, because the nation did not maintain the yearly Shabbat, then Daniel the prophet, because he was speaking of tabernacling, did understand by the Megillah of Yirmiyahu the prophet that the time was then expiring. So what has he said? Did Daniel the prophet mention about a hole over there in the Ozarks where people would, as a politician, would go underground? Did he mention of any other kingdom other than the Israelic lineage, tabernacling would be granted a holy city where they would go underground? Did he say then knowledge would increase because of nations of the non-lineage of the tabernacling would be able to save themselves in their own cities? So then the politician Daniel explained in the second chapter. He speaks of the statue. Iron does not mix with clay. Then the end of the time, then we have to read the second chapter, the end of the second chapter, where then there is relation with iron and clay. You don't have to read the other pieces of metal. Are we from the kingdom of Babylon? No. Are we the kingdom then of Medes and Persians? No. Are we from the Alexander the Great? No. From the legs of iron? No. Why are we reading the rest of it for? We understand there is a relation with a metal and a kingdom, another metal, and then a kingdom, another metal, and then a kingdom. What we have to read is the area or the time of the end. Iron does not mix with clay, and understand what the politician Daniel was explaining. But then the truth is so refreshing, so nice listening. When the politicians, they listen, they are so stupid in their own. They simply can't believe it. How couldn't they understand what was so obvious? And then the problem is, governments, they have a tendency of always the regular people are the crazy people. Back in the old times, they would say, ambition would be sin for the regulars, but then an improvement for the rich. Where they themselves then, they build huge areas where they're going to be in holes there, as reptiles. Now let's try to understand for what it is. We have our country, USA, replete with politicians that have absolutely no industry background. People that came from rich families, they don't give a damn. Filthy rich, they don't give a damn whatsoever. Most of them don't. They don't understand what it takes to get a factory going. They're always trusting in a printing money machine, doing a nice job or not doing a nice job. Who cares and who gives a damn? The printing machine is printing money. But then when speaking of the regular workers that have to get up in the morning and do the job, and they have their finances very tight every time, then they began to evaluate. They began to study the scripture from its Israelic lineage. And then when the government, they listen to the truth, oh no, the people are crazy. But when they face their own junk, thousands, lots of money they spend, they stole from the people. Because the people, the citizens, they didn't ask you to build this Ozark junk. How stupid is our government? Not say they are incapable, that's not the point. The tone of stupidity related with it, it's the inability of listening what then heaven is saying, yet they don't take action. When you are driving a road and comes in front of you then an animal, and it's startled in front of you. You have the headlights on the front and the animal in quote gets frozen. When the government, they listen to truth, they can't simply believe it. because they thought they were so smart and they couldn't understand the basics. And then rather than functioning then as smart people, you know, or if you are a person not stupid, you can consider yourself smart. Do they know what synonymous means? But then the government, always imperialist, is trying to, you know, get a hold of, even though it's wrong, they know what's wrong, they do wrong, they don't understand what they are doing, and they continue on doing wrong. Because they have done wrong for so long, they don't know how to do it properly. The U.S. government must recognize they have built this Ozark place over there. It was a waste of money, waste of time, waste of material. But then they blame the people, always the people or somebody else, that then other people are crazy, never the government, when the very government is crazy. Let's read what Daniel the politician has said. So then we understand the iron and clay, it does not mix. Why did he say iron and clay? Because humans, they are very imagery related people. Now when speaking with the government, they think themselves so gods, you know, so beyond any kind of a religion, so beyond any kind of a system, so beyond any kind of a, only God knows what, and then they become stupid. Never think yourself always higher than the instructions. Every time you drift away from instructions, you are stupid. I don't care who you are. Because it's your opinion. Sure, the opinion of our government is going to end up in a hole. Burrows over there as reptiles. And the whole nation is going to stay on the surface, and only God knows what's going to take place, but it won't be nice. Daniel the politician pointed out the time of the end. Yohanan then the prophet, also Shaliach, has said the time of the end. In every nation doing trade with China. You have to be real stupid if you don't understand the leader of the trades leadership of the time of the end. You know, third part of the ships is an indicator. Then you'll find later, then every nation doing trade with China, chapter 1:8, and the merchants of the earth doing trade with China. You know what chapter 1:8 is? It's a warning from the Messiah, so then his people, they can come out of the system not yet implemented. During this time. However, when then tabernacling is implemented, the Messiah already said what's going to take place. Because you don't read by numbers. You don't start chapter 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and then you read, oh no, 1:8 is far after. No, you are wrong. You don't read the Tzayelic lineage, true scripture, by numbers. You know, we don't want to make our government as stupid, but so far this is what they presented themselves as. They are presenting themselves as stupid. It's the same junkie gang of the time of the 1,000 years of deceit, pointing fingers at each other, blaming each other. Non-industrious people, they get higher positions, they don't understand market. Do you think they're going to care for the rest of the nation in creating jobs? And then when the Chinese system comes, retailers are out of work. Then they understand why they are building the Ozarks over there. They're going to stick themselves in holes as reptiles because they are incompetent. Oh, but when you talk like this, you make people so low. How the Messiah, he was not playing games. You know, even his own disciples, his very own people, walking with him, eating with him, understanding the scriptures with him. Then came the people of the law, you know, mixed up with the political system of the time. And the Messiah was speaking the truth on their faces, and then they were very hurt. And then his own disciples, you know, Messiah, the way you spoke to them, you truly heard them. You know what the Messiah said? Go join them. If you don't understand the scripture and then you want to take sides on their behalf, join them. Then we find another layer related with it in Galah, 20th chapter, to make it easier. The Messiah was born as the king, thus his 1,000 years. Then came the 1,000 years of deceit. What was the 1,000 years of the Messiah? He was indicating yet the kingdom to come via tabernacling. Then came a point where then the Muslims destroyed the holy city of Jerusalem and the tomb. It was the first time ever since the Messiah went up, that the tomb was destroyed. No more tabernacling. You have a world absolutely out of its wits. Has to have an order in a world to function. Does you have to have a new world order? Because whatsoever was known of tabernacling didn't no longer exist. Thus Nahashatan then had to come up with some sort of a scripture of his own. You know, people have to believe something because, you know, they are so lost. They have no idea what to do. So what did Nahashatan do? He copied some scandalized scripture, you know, from the Israelic legend halfway, you know, and people believed it. Thus the regular scripture you have in your home, concocted during the time of 1,000 years of deceit. Nahashatan's gift for you. Because it's your opinion. Well, we hope our government won't go into a hole like a reptile and leave you on the surface with no services. Because you heard people talking this way. Well, join them. We only hope the government has enough space underground for the entire nation. Were you invited? So then, finalizing what Daniel the prophet had said, speaking as then politician, The 12th chapter, then, it's more serious, because then an angel from heaven spoke. It's direct orders from the very Creator himself. So then we have to understand what the angel has said. Then he explains, at the end of time, people would go to and fro, and knowledge would increase. So then, can we speak against the word of an angel? It's because of interpretation. That's not the point. Can we speak against the words of an angel? Heaven has stated, knowledge would increase. Then also has said, people would go to and fro. When you read Galah, the 20th chapter, explaining of the 1,000 years of the Messiah, then 1,000 years went to Nahashatan, then you understand people would go to and fro, speaking of the restoration period a bit prior of. If you understand a bit of a layering of the scripture, then you can identify it instantly. If you are brought up reading verses and numbers, then you are screwed. Thus you have then taken your time reading the scoundrelized scripture gifted from Nahashatan during his time of 1,000 years of deceit. He is no longer in charge. Bad news, Nahashatan is no longer in charge. But what he has then translated, he gave you. Scoundrelized scripture. Even our government, thinking they were so smart, they're going to throw themselves in holes over there in the Ozarks, living like reptiles. It's got 12 gates of some sort. Then knowledge would increase. From a perspective of a politician, you can only do an action with knowledge. You have to increase then what you do. More trade. Knowledge would increase, then you find Galah or revelation layering with it the third part of the ships. Then you find chapter 1:8, the Messiah indicating for his people to come out of the system because they have to continue on with tabernacling. What do you understand of Galah linking up with Daniel from a politician's viewpoint, explaining of the nations of the end? What do we understand of China thus far? Very industrious country. What have they done recently? They have purchased a very bad deal from the scandal of 2008 mortgage bust. Now let me ask you this. What country in a normal state of mind would buy a piece of junk of a deal? Other than the system. But the USA is smart. They thought they made a nice deal with the mortgage system. Got the Chinese managing it because they want the system. Then you have the Bank of China, very powerful, linked up with Citigroup. Was it not Citigroup involved with the mortgages? So then you have the banking system linking up, you have the Chinese system coming, you have the mortgage linking up with it, and then you find a Swift company from China. specialized in internet transactions. But because we like our liberties. That's precisely what the Chinese is going to use. Because of the inability of the government to do what the Messiah said, give to the government what belongs to the government. The government has the obligation of then deducting taxes. They did not do what the Messiah told them to do. There it is, they're going to a hole. Then you have the mortgage bust, you have Bank of China and Citigroup, you have then the most important part of the American family as having a home, then mortgages leaking up with the system. But then Americans think, oh, it was a bad deal. They're not interested in the deal of mortgages, they're interested in the system. Either you are retarded, or the scripture is absolutely clear. So what is it coming in the next 36 months? Well, let's verify first what IMF has said 2 years ago. Is that because IMF has some sort of a prophetic understanding? No, they only evaluate money, time, and trade. From the pace then our government was spending and earning and producing wouldn't last more than 5 years. Couple of years have already gone. We have 36 months. If we don't get our taxation system instant taxes, every financial institutions then tracked 100%. It's not 99.99, it's 100. But our government think they are smart. Well, let's try this. Let's have the union then separated, each state to his own, and let's verify how far Washington D.C. is going. It's very simple. The states detach themselves from Washington D.C., let's watch them. Because this person then is being, a traitor, trying to do treason. No, only being practical. Some states are responsible, some states are not. Some states, they elect the people, then they are industrious for the benefit of the people. Some states, they are simply scoundrels. That's no treason. You're being smart. You are very selective when you place people in positions of responsibility. Washington, D.C., they don't know how to work. Because they have the printing machine, they have 36 months of printing machine. So then, politician Daniel said, and then the angel did confirm. People would go to and fro, explain the 1,000 years of the seat. From 1009 to 2009, time of the seat. At the end of it, knowledge would increase, indicating the time of restoration. So then, understanding Bank of China and Citigroup, we understand Morgan is linking up with it, we understand the SWIFT companies working together. What can you expect in the next 36 months? The Chinese simply they're going to wait until the monetary system goes down, and then they make the system available. You download the Chinese system in your computer. You invest in any product you want. But then imperialists, because they are so inflated with the pride, no instructions of any kind, no kind of religious activity, they are always superior of any kind of instruction. They ended up being stupid. Not saying the Americans have no ability. The point is because they are so inflated with pride of being above any kind of instruction. And then we find during this U.S. government, a government with inability of governing. Because those people over there, they are not industrious. They don't understand what it means production. What is the natural effect when a person is not from an industrious background? They hide behind the printing machine. And the situation is, when the situation gets very ugly, they simply get an aircraft and go someplace else. They have houses around the world. They don't give a damn. So what can we expect from the nations? Well, those nations, they are united, are going to be not longer whining. But they won't be united any longer. And some of them are going to be whining around. Because the unification of the kingdoms were then required because there was no tabernacling around. But the tabernacling is returning, so what is the reason then for uniting kingdoms? The system is coming then, providing them what is required for them, they can govern themselves. But as then when the Messiah came, there was roughly 100 years of transitional time. Because they had to get rid of, their traditions. The problem is we don't have this luxury. 70-32 is the very maximum. The time expired. You best learn very fast. You've got to get our taxation system working to exact standards. The next 36 months, then not only this, but then we have to have our industry as it was during the 50s. I don't care how it's going to get done. The government has to come up with some ideas. Since they are non-industrious people, most of them are not. You know the answer. And the Creator is not forcing anybody. The Messiah said, you heard for them, join them. But there we can evaluate a couple of situations. One of them, our government can get some shame on their faces, lean up the government, generate more electricity, and then revitalize our industry, and work in a taxation system to exact standards for the next 36 months. Or the separation of the states. There are no other options. Whatsoever we have learned during the time of 1,000 years is discarded. It can't be fixed. It shows the very strong hand of the Creator, and whatsoever He does is always the best. So if you don't think there is then this Ozark place, go over there to Mountain View. The name of the town is Mountain, you know, mountain. You go up on a mountain. View, Mountain View. There is a bank over there for every 50-some people. One bank per around 50 people. One bank for every 50, roughly 50 people. In LA, you would have then roughly a bank for 11,000 people. New York, a bank for 7,000. Mountain View, in the midst of the forest, nearly one bank for 50. You can drive over there. You find 12 gates over there. You can drive in a mountain.